English author Samuel Johnson said, "Memory is the mother of all wisdom." Tonight, we remember some of the people we've met during the past 8 seasons of The Best Times who have offered us words of wisdom. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. Albert Einstein was perhaps the greatest genius of the 20th century. When he was asked about how he attained his wisdom, he said, "Wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it." We think of wisdom as being synonymous with old age, and civilizations throughout history have looked to their elders for the wisdom that comes with experience. Poets and philosophers have given us gems of knowledge about life, love, and the human experience. Through 8 seasons of this show, I've interviewed hundreds of people and shared their experiences. Tonight, we'll revisit a few of them and hear their words of wisdom. The oldest person I've interviewed for this show was Brigadier General Gertrude Perdue of the Salvation Army. She had just celebrated her 100th birthday. She grew up in the Salvation Army and followed in her parents' footsteps, devoting over 80 years of her life to serving the neediest among us. Reaching the century mark didn't stop Gertrude from her daily work at the Salvation Army headquarters. She said, "You never know when the seed you plant today will take hold." In her lifetime, she planted many seeds, and she has words of wisdom for all of us.
Enjoy life. Even in this changing world, don't get discouraged about it. Just go with the flow. Go with the change. Take it because it comes, and make the best. Not only make the best, but try to make it better.
We are aging, and so it's not an us and them as we often talk about it. It really is that we are all in this process. I'm an official old person now by the U.S. government standards, but the thing is that for all of us, it's a process that we are going through. We're all engaged with this with our families and with other people in our community, whether we ourselves are older or not. And we have to think about how do all these pieces fit together. We have parts of our society that would like to pit older people, particularly programs for older people, against those for children. That's a disastrous thing for us to do as a society. We have to work together to make sure that people can thrive at any age from childhood on.
I first met Bunny Lee Wilhelm at the regular Friday night meeting of the Memphis Bop Club. She wasn't hard to spot on the dance floor that night. As I found out later, Bunny Lee has been dancing, in one way or another, throughout her life. She started as a go-go dancer at the old Nightlighter Club and has danced her way through a series of occupations ranging from court clerk to burlesque performer. Today, she teaches yoga at various places around town, including the McWhirter Senior Center. As you watch Bunny Lee bend her body into various pretzel shapes, realize that she's in her 80s. She definitely doesn't act her age.
It's been easy for me to laugh this lifetime. You program your life. You make choices with every thought you think and every word you say and every emotion you have. That's how powerful you are. I'm not a couch potato because I try to be independent. I even still cut my own grass. I got out Tuesday and cut the front and backyards. Of course, I used a riding mower for the most of it. I have one of my grandsons that's going to get Grandma a leather jacket and a helmet. She hot rods that thing.
Jo Wood was a one-woman volunteer corps. She filled her calendar with volunteer dates at local arts organizations. If you've been to an event at the Orpheum or Theater Memphis or Playhouse on the Square in years past, you may have been ushered to your seat by Jo. She was also a loyal volunteer at WKNO, helping with our pledge drives and auctions.
It just gives me a lot of satisfaction that I've done something to help out somewhere and maybe encourage other people, maybe my age, that do sit home. There's always some place that you can volunteer in the city of Memphis.
For those people who are bored with retirement, Jo has some words of advice.
Get out and be active. Don't sit and just, if you sit at home, everything goes bad for you. You lose all your muscles and everything and all. And the last year when I had my checkup, my doctor says, I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, keep doing it. But I just enjoy staying busy. I'm just love to be out with people and doing things.
Here's another guy who doesn't act his age. Dale Sanders is also in his 80s, but he's always looking for the next adventure. In the Navy, he was a hard hat diver, a notoriously dangerous assignment. In the 60s, he was a champion spear fisherman and once held the record for underwater breath holding at just over 6 minutes. In 2015, at age 80, Dale became the oldest person to paddle the entire length of the Mississippi River, from the source in Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico, a distance of over 2,300 miles. After 80 days of paddling, Dale completed his journey. In 2017, he found another record to conquer. Dale is the oldest person at age 82 to through hike the 2,190-mile Appalachian Trail. Now you know why his nickname is the Graybeard Adventurer.
I'm speaking to the generation before me, 50s and 60s. Those people, if they prepare themselves now, like I did, they will be and they can be doing the same things I'm doing now at 80 and 81.
Retirement means different things to different people. Phil and Cheryl Gaston embarked on their retirement adventure by selling their 3,500 square foot home outside of Atlanta and moving into a 350 square foot RV. Their nomadic lifestyle has led them from the Badlands of South Dakota to the top of Pikes Peak in Colorado. When I left them, they were planning to visit the Grand Canyon and then drive up the scenic Pacific coastline on California One. They plan on continuing their retirement adventure for as long as they can.
People wait till they retire to do anything, and then they might not make it to retirement. So I just said, let's do it. Let's sell everything.
It was really a chance to live for us.
Exactly.
I mean, because we were literally living to work.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And it was, we looked at it as a chance to go live.
While Phil and Cheryl are on a permanent road trip, Ralph and Twyla Williams decided to pull up stakes and move to a new home 8,000 miles away in Tanzania. They are following in the footsteps of their missionary parents by becoming Christian missionaries to the drought-afflicted Maasai people. And they go there as teachers, teaching the Maasai how to build water cisterns and biosand water filters from readily available materials, teaching them to read, and showing them how they can establish their own businesses. They hope that their efforts can make a difference in the lives of the Maasai.
If we can establish a group of people who are teaching their neighbors how to read and write and make their life better that way, if we can show people how to create a business and they're making a living and showing somebody else how to make a living, we've really accomplished what we're there for.
I think that most people used to think that their retirement was a time to spend with their extended family and to travel. But if your retirement ends up being a 30-year retirement, you really have to figure out what's going to be meaningful for you for a 30-year period.
Unless somebody in retirement has a passion, a reason to get up every morning, it doesn't matter how much money they have. So the first advice I would give people is, if you're thinking about retirement, think about what you really want to do.
We both started working when we were 16.
Well, actually 14, but we're not.
Now, you know, I think at one time we talked about what we would do when we retired, and his dream was to do exactly the same thing he started doing when he was 14.
Yep. I may yet own a soda fountain.
Bob Sauter isn't an ordained minister, but he is as devoted to his ministry as any preacher of the gospel. In 2007, Bob and his wife took their retirement money and bought this small house at the busy corner of Summer and Highland. This is Forgiveness House. In legal terms, it's a residential reentry center, more commonly called a halfway house. 12 men paroled from prison live here for a minimum of 90 days as they try to rebuild their lives. Bob and his staff operate on a shoestring budget to provide guidance and help to men who are often shunned by society.
And while these men cannot probably face, many of them face their victims, again, from a spiritual point of view, the Lord will equalize that situation. And they will be able to go back out into the community and help somebody else that's been damaged. And in that restoration will be helpful not only to that person, but also to our guys that are out there, you know, trying to make a difference in somebody else's life.
Diane Height is dedicated to a different group, the men and women who serve this nation in our military. This is a regular meeting of the group she founded, Forever Young. Diane's idea was to grant the wishes of war veterans, specifically the members of the greatest generation that fought in World War II. She's raised money to take veterans on trips to the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., and has brought veterans back to their battlefields, from D-Day on Utah Beach to the Battle of the Bulge in Belgium. And by doing so, she's given closure to 70-year-old wounds.
I like to say, as you throw a stone into a pond and you just see the ripple effect, that's exactly what happens with Forever Young. You'll see it in the healing in the lives of our veterans, and then it just trickles out to the family members and to the community, and it just goes on and on and on.
Sometimes words of wisdom aren't spoken, for actions can speak louder than words. Larry Smith and Naomi Van Tol first met in a canoe, and that's a fitting place because they've both dedicated their lives to protecting and preserving our environment. Naomi champions the Old Forest in Overland Park, where she leads hikes through a woodland that hasn't changed in 10,000 years. Larry's passion is the Wolf River. Through his job at the Corps of Engineers and his work with the Wolf River Conservancy, he seeks to reclaim the wetlands and protect the river in its natural state. Naomi and Larry have a passion for the places that naturalist John Muir called the fountains of life.
I just feel so strongly attracted to, the natural world, and I love forests and I love swamps, and I hate to see them destroyed. So it's important to preserve some of those places, and we can't preserve them all, but we can preserve some of them, and at least enough so that our future generations can see, what we had. It would just be a real shame to lose those resources.
Looking back over the accomplishments that I have done and the accomplishments that Naomi has done, I can't speak for her, but for myself, I take a great deal of pride to feel in the feeling that when I leave the planet, there'll be something preserved or in a park, if you will, that's there for others that I'll never know these human beings, and they're going to be there and enjoy it, and they might sit and wonder who did this, why did they do it? A life without these places, it's just like life without art or music.
Life without air to breathe.
Life without air,
Yes.
it's connected with where we belong.
I've met a number of people who are devoted to a mission in their lives. Reverend Lisa Anderson is a Disciples of Christ minister who started a program called Room in the Inn. Every winter, from November through March, churches open their doors to the city's homeless. Members of congregations from across the area cook and serve hot meals and provide warm beds for the night. On any given night in the winter, there may be upwards of 2,000 homeless people on our streets. Reverend Anderson taught me a lot about who the homeless really are and why we should open our doors and our hearts to them.
I think there are some people who have given up the idea that there's any other way to be, but I'm not sure that there's anybody I've met that wants to live on the street. There has been some beauty in opening up what we call a sanctuary to people who need sanctuary, and that's such a beautiful concept.
When I met Reverend Jack Conrad, he was making the rounds of cancer patients at Methodist Hospital Germantown. He spent 35 years as a corporate executive in the manufacturing industry, making railroad parts. And then a chain of events led him to a second career as a chaplain. The wisdom he gained from reinventing his life can serve as a lesson to anyone who's arrived at one of life's crossroads.
Every last one of us, looking at our particular status, will think that if we had more, we'd be better off, and that's just not true. Who we are makes a much more difference than what we think we have. It's not security against death. It's not security that life is going to be fair. It just isn't. But if we're secure in who we are, and we can imagine ourselves doing different things, oh Lord, what a great place this would be.
And I do think, as I've hit the 50 threshold, that much of life, the first half is about achievement and success. And at some point, it's about moving from success to significance. And that's what spirituality is all about. It's saying that life is too meaningful to be meaningless. It's about more than the aspiration and the achievement, and that it is about the spiritual quest.
You know, the older I get, the more I'm just really mystified by life's intricacies and delicacies. It's a natural process. You know, it's full of cliches, but you kind of move from the love of wisdom to the wisdom of love, I think, and you kind of you're taking that really, even though it's just from here to here, this is a very, very long journey from your head to your heart, and you experience a sort of cardiognosis, I think, the older that you get, and you're not thinking so much, and you're actually You're thinking with your heart. Does that make sense?
Everyone likes a good love story. Well, this one proves that romance is ageless. Joy Jamison and Sam Nichols were high school sweethearts, but World War II took Sam halfway across the world, and they lost contact with one another. For nearly 60 years, they led separate lives. Each thought the other had died, and that would have been the end of their story, except for Sam's sister Millie and email.
About a month later, the phone rang early in the morning, and this female voice said, "Joy, this is a voice from the past." I said, "Oh, who is this?" And she said, "This is Millie Gustafson. I'm Sam's Nichols' little sister." And I said, "Oh, what happened to Sam?" And she said, "Oh, he's living out in Arizona." And I just about flipped. I couldn't believe it. We began emailing each other. And that, to me, is the beauty of our story, because we could go into depths, not only just to find out what had happened in the last 50 years, but we exchanged ideas and our philosophy of life and what was important to us. And that, to me, is what made our love such a deep one, because it was a few months later that he finally came to see me. When we saw each other, it was, I don't know, the old magic was just still there. Nothing had ever changed, really, even though it was a long time after.
In 2001, after a lifetime apart, Joy and Sam were married. I've done more pledge breaks with Jim Eichner at my side than I can count. He was synonymous with WKNO. A few years ago, I did a story about his creative side. When he wasn't acting in theatrical productions around town, Jim was painting. He studied watercolor with Fred Rawlinson, and painting made Jim see the world around him in a different way.
I have a little mantra that I repeat most mornings that is an acronym, GLAD. To wake up grateful, to find some way that day to love, to show love, to treat life like an adventure, the GLAD, and the fourth is the most difficult for me, and that's discipline. You do all this, but you've got to have some discipline with it. And this motivates me and keeps me going, and it's exciting to say there is no acceptable alternative to viewing this day as an adventure.
Lester Gingold was a man of many careers and much wisdom. After 2 careers, Lester was on his way to retirement when, at age 72, he became the editor and publisher of the Best Times newspaper. For the next 20 years, Lester threw himself into learning everything he could about gerontology. He wrote editorials about aging issues and attended national aging conferences. This show was his brainchild. In his encore career, as he called it, Lester was determined to make a difference. He finally retired from the newspaper at age 95. After a lifetime of stories and a legacy of helping others, Lester's philosophy of life can serve as wisdom for us all.
You're never too old to learn. You're never too old to love. You're never too old to pray. I do more of these every day. That's it.
Want more information about life after 50? Go online to watch more shows and find more resources. And send us your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. That's all for this edition of The Best Times. Please join us next week for more stories about life after 50. Until then, I'm Chris Hardaway. Thanks for watching, and good night. Funding for The Best Times is provided by the Plow Foundation, striving to do the greatest good by helping the greatest number of people since 1964. Additional funding is provided by the members of WKNO. Thank you.